Good morning. It is Wednesday, December 20th, 2017. It is 9:30 in the morning. I'm going to call to order the Ottawa City Commission regular meeting. Could we please have the roll call?
Mayor Kaler.
Present.
Commissioner Skidmore.
Present.
Commissioner Graves.
Present.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Present.
Commissioner Crowley.
Present.
I want to welcome those that are in the audience today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those individuals who are participating by watching on some kind of electronic format or on KOFO. So thanks for being part of the process. We will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation with Pastor Todd Miller from Cherry Street Wesleyan Church. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning. Again, I want to say thank you so much for being who you are, the government of the people, our officials, and this wonderful time of the year. The seasons, the decorations, all the fun that goes on with all of this. But it's also a time to remember family and friends and things along that line. And a time of Advent season. And in my Advent devotional today, the reading was out of the book of Isaiah. Go figure. Isaiah points to the coming of the new Messiah more than just about any prophet. And let me read to you out of that scripture reading. It's Isaiah 9:6. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. And it reminds me of this government, this city, and how it seems like to me you all still seek him and his counsel. You're not afraid to say that. You're not afraid to admit that. And a representative of some people of this town, I just want to thank you for that. So this morning, let's pray to him for his counsel upon his government. Bow with me. Heavenly Father, we do thank you that you've raised up an army of people to represent you, raised up a group of leaders here that seek you. And we know a lot of this world doesn't do that. A lot of our officials throughout the world do not seek you for counsel. But it is just warms my heart, and I know puts a smile on your face, that this government here seeks your wonderful counsel through all the decisions that are made for the people of this town. We thank you for that. And may you continue to guide them in a way that brings you glory, in a way that brings glory to this wonderful city of Ottawa, and brings hope and healing to this town. God, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Miller. We appreciate your words today. That moves us on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from the November 27th study session, December 4th special call meeting at the Goppert Teen Park ribbon cutting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. That moves us on to our regular agenda, which starts out with, every time we have our regular agenda, it starts out with public comment. Today we are going to hear from Levi Trineri. Oh, man, did I get it right? Awesome. Come on up. While you're coming this way, Levi, I want to read the paragraph that goes along with public comment. Persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items on the agenda may do so as that item agenda is called. Persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items not on the agenda and that are under the jurisdiction of the City Commission may do so at the time at which at the time when they are called upon by the mayor. Comments on personnel matters and matters pending in court or with other outside tribunals are not permitted. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and any presentation is for information purposes only, and no action will be taken. Saying that, Mr. Levi, would you like to, Trineri, right?
Yep.
Yes, I
Nobody can pronounce
did.
it. It's fine.
Okay. We'd like to hear from you today.
All right, well, I'm Levi Trineri. I'm currently the owner, as most of you guys know, of Trineri Tree Care here in town. We've been doing it since 2002. And my concern is that whereas in the city of Ottawa is one of the very few cities around that does not require tree trimmers to have a tree trimmer's license in this town. And I know it sounds crazy, I should be voting for more politics and more you guys involved, but really, I think we really need to do it because we have a lot of companies or guys coming out of town, I call them gypsies. They come in out of town, they go around door to door, they say they're working for their grandpa, which is named Joe Smith or something real basic, and they're just straight taking advantage of people, and not just taking advantage of them on their pocketbook, but they're also taking advantage of them on their work ethic and techniques of trimming their trees. And for example, about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, there was a company that came in, real nice, shiny equipment, all that stuff that came in. And I know firsthand they went around over on 15th Street, they went south between probably Ash and Maple, even they went north a little bit too. In that area, there primarily is a lot of our older community people over there. They went around door to door, and that's a lot of my customers over there I've had in the last 15, 16 years of doing this. Those people called me up saying that company come by and told them the tree is in horrible shape and needs to come out right now. And one particular lady that lives over on Maple Street, and I'll be more than happy to take you guys over there and talk to her. She had a tree that we trimmed 2 years ago, went through there, pruned it out, top-notch trim out all the way through, cleaned it out. They went and told her that tree's going to cost $8,000 and need to come out right now. Had her talked into doing it. The lady is over in her mid-90s, had her talked into doing it. While the guys were getting ready to get started on that tree, luckily her daughter called, and she told her daughter that she's going to have that tree cut down. And they're like, what for? Well, these guys showed up at my house, told them they need to come out right now. Well, when the daughter asked, well, how much was it? $8,000 to cut the tree down. The daughter called me up and showed up over there. Those guys were stopped work because the daughter told them to stop work. The tree absolutely needs nothing. Nothing at all. I mean, doesn't need, nothing. Usually after a couple of years they need something, but that tree really needs nothing at all. Another guy off 15th Street they done work for, they actually got the job, did the job. Horrible cuts up in this tree, everywhere you name it. Well, that's the same problem with that tree. In 5 years from now, that tree's not going to recover from that. It's going to have cavities, disease. The tree's probably going to need to come down later on. Another guy over off of 16th or 17th and Willow, they actually did a little bit of prune work for him, and while they're there, they went up in another tree willingly and checked out his tree. And while they're up there, they said the tree had a hole big enough in it they could shove their hand all the way through it. Mind you, this tree's about 24 inches of DBH, which we call chest height. It's about 35, 40 foot tall, so the homeowner can't get up there and look at it. He said it was up there real bad and needed to come down. It's going to be $3,000 to cut that tree down. He got a second opinion. We showed up. Not only that the work they do was real shoddy, but it was horrible work they did. We went up there, inspected the tree. The tree didn't need to come down, in my opinion. Homeowner insisted it needed to come down, got a bid from us, $350 to cut that tree down, including the stump. So these guys are coming in here taking advantage of them. And I feel like we need to have some sort of licensing in town. That way, that if there's issues with the homeowners, they can call the city up, and whoever you guys appoint, Parks Department, Taylor, whoever it is, the code enforcement, whoever, can at least come over and make sure they have a city license. And if they're going to have a city license, well, at least they'll have enough to, in insurance, and if somebody does damage something, they can come back and have an insurance and stuff like that. So, that's my opinion on it.
Thank you so much for your comments today. I certainly had no idea what you...
I can go on for days.
Yeah, I know you could. And I would hope that you get a chance to talk to our Community Development Department regarding your suggestion. And we look forward to hearing from you again soon and working with you in other avenues.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Are there other individuals who would like to make public comment this morning? All right, seeing none, we will move on to declaration. At this time, I'd like to give commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication that they might have had that would influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Commissioners? All right, seeing none, we will move on to new business. Item 10.
Recognition and presentation of retirement plaque to Susan Hughes.
We're going to call Scott Bird up to the microphone to highlight one of our great employees that has recently left us.
Mayor, Commission, I had the privilege of speaking at Susan's retirement party get-together last week, and I told the crowd there that when we hired Susan Hughes 16 years ago, we made a mistake. And the reason I say that is because she had applied a year earlier, and we should have hired her then, because she turned out to be an extraordinary employee for us. She started in the front office at the finance department, and wasn't very long. She moved to the accounts payable desk, and that's where she spent most of her career. And part of the reason that she spent her career there was that she was so incredibly good at it. And I related a story that the city manager told me. He came to me one day and he says, Susan is exactly the kind of person we need in that position, because she didn't even back down from me. When I didn't have the proper paperwork, she told me I had to get it, and I think some of you all have experienced some of that as well. So have I. In fact, I remember chasing a waitress down into the kitchen to get my itemized receipt so I didn't have to justify what I'd had to eat that day, and rightfully so. She told me one day, I'm a taxpayer, I pay utilities, that's my money too, but more importantly, it's the city's money. And she has been a tremendous guard of the city's monies, and I never worried about where we were on accounts payable when it came to Susan doing her job. And she's a person of faith. And I also related a story when she came and talked to me and held me accountable as a person of faith. And as a person of faith myself, I appreciated that very much. So Susan, this is in recognition of your continuous service to the city of Ottawa, Kansas from 2001 to 2017. And I want to thank you again for all that you've done.
Susan, we'd like to hear from you.
Well, it's with mixed feelings that I resigned. I really did like working here, but I think it's time to move on and enjoy what's left of the rest of my life. Everybody here has really been great. There's always a few conflicts, a few of you that I sort of would groan when I would see you start to turn receipts in, because I knew what that would mean. But that was part of the job, and so it's always good to hear that what you've done was appreciated, and being that thorn in the side, I'll be gone, and so hopefully somebody else will be that thorn that you need in the side to keep everything running correctly. So I appreciate your support and this appreciation. Thank you very much.
Susan, thank you so much for your service, and on behalf of the entire commission, we're sorry for all the receipts that we didn't get to you in a timely manner. I'm not going to point any commissioner out in particular, but I'm just saying that some of us may have been more timely than others, and we're sorry that we didn't get them to you quicker, but we did our very best. So thank you, and we'll miss you. So that moves us on to item 11.
Public hearing to consider 2017 budget amendments to the special parks and library funds.
Towards the end of the year, the Finance Department reviews all budgeted funds to determine if a budget amendment is advisable. Kansas statute allows for a municipality to amend budgeted funds in order to legally expend dollars not included in the original budget. 2 funds were identified as candidates for amendment in 2017, and those are special parks and library. And I believe Mr. Byrd will be addressing this matter today.
And you pretty well explained it, Mayor. We, about this time each year, we take a look at the budgeted funds to make sure that we're not exceeding what we budgeted almost a year and a half ago. And because there are activities that go on that sometimes we cannot see that far ahead. In the case of special parks, the community has been most gracious in donating monies towards the teen park in particular and parks in general. And we've gotten a lot of work done as a result and spent more than what we anticipated in our budget because of those donations and because of the activities that this body wants to move forward with. And so the Special Parks Fund is being increased from $264,751 to $332,635 for an adjusted budget. And in the case of the library, we had cash carryover at the beginning of this year that we had not anticipated, and we actually received a little more tax money throughout the year than what we had anticipated. And so that adjustment is from $853,048 to $866,090. And I would appreciate well, let me say this. The notice of budget hearing has gone out in a timely fashion for this particular budget hearing, and after you have an opportunity to ask for questions from the gallery, then I would appreciate the next item on the agenda be approved. That is, the budget amendments be approved.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
Thank you very much.
So I will open the public hearing to consider 2017 budget amendments. Are there individuals who would like to address this particular budget amendment or this particular line item? Anybody who would like to address this line item? All right, seeing none, we will close the hearing. Commissioners, that will move us on to item 12.
Acceptance of 2017 budget amendments.
Acceptance of the budget amendments to the special parks and library funds. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 12.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion among commissioners?
Mr. Byrd, on that increase on the special parks, maybe you were explaining that to me when you started talking. I was a little step behind you there. What, about $70,000 difference? What was that specifically for?
Most of that increase in spending was at the teen park. We've gotten a lot more work done there than we anticipated, and as I indicated, we were able to receive revenues and donations in particular that we had not anticipated.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions regarding this item? If not, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Mayor Kayler?
And I vote yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Byrd. That moves us on to item on 13 on the agenda.
Request for 2018 funding agreements.
Approval, this is the approval of funding agreements with Franklin County Development Council, Willow Domestic Violence Center, Elizabeth Layton Center, and Ottawa Main Street Association. I believe our city manager, Richard Neinstead, will be addressing this matter.
So thank you, Commissioners. As the mayor said, these are funding agreements that we execute with these agencies that the city allocates a certain amount to. And for the public's information who might be watching us, let me walk through those with you. Franklin County Development Council is our lead economic development agency, which is also funded by the Franklin County, and I believe that they took action at their meeting this morning and approved the same contract that's before you now. And we look to them to assist the community, to be the lead in bringing in new jobs, new investment, and selling this community, much like James and Mr. Altman was involved, along with the city and the county, with the new hotel that is being built south, in the south part of our community out by I-35. That brings jobs, that brings investment, and it brings private investment to town. We also allocate money to the Willow Domestic Violence Center because our police department works a lot with the Willow, and it's because of domestic violence situations, and the small amount that we allocate goes to Franklin County families that are affected, Franklin County victims that are affected by domestic violence. We work with the Elizabeth Layton Center, and I see that Leslie Board, the executive director, is here. And I had the honor of serving on that board for 8 years, and I know the importance that community mental health has in our community, and I know the importance that community mental health agencies have in every community. And the funds that we allocate to Elizabeth Layton helps our citizens in Franklin County. It is another agency that our police department gets involved with. Sometimes there's an intersection between domestic violence and mental health, but it's a way that we can help Leslie's agency do what they have to do in our community, and the Ottawa Main Street, which is a longtime partner of ours. We look to Main Street to help bolster the retail downtown, to do promotions that bring people to town, that spend money, that help fund some of the things that we do, and also build a community and build a downtown area that the community has activities and events that they can go to. So those are the 4 agencies that we fund. Some of those representatives are here if you have questions of them, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Neinstead? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion if there is one.
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move that we approve the funding agreements as presented in item 13.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion among commissioners? I might just want to point out that these entities actually perform really critical services in our community that we cannot do as a governmental agency. So it is important that we have this agreement with them and that we look to them as partners. So very important. If there is no further discussion, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Kaler?
And I vote yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. 2 more things. As the mayor said, these are critical agencies that have a major impact upon our community, current citizens, future citizens, and how sustainable we are. And the other thing I would like to tell you is we have one more major contract to come to you. It will be after the first of the year, and that is with another funding partner of ours, Prairie Paws. So we just were able to get that, the ink put down, and the city attorney and Prairie Paws and the city came to agreement to what that should be said. So you will be seeing that at your first study session of 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Neinstead. That moves us to item 14 on the agenda.
Resolution proposing to recognize housing market study for preparation of a rural housing incentive district.
This resolution finds that there are housing needs in Ottawa, and the city's intent to establish a rural housing incentive district for Prairie Fire Housing Project. I believe Mrs. Lee will be addressing this matter today.
Good morning. The item for consideration is the first step towards establishment of a rural housing incentive district. But this particular item acknowledges a housing assessment, housing market study that was prepared and shared with us that identifies a need for quality rental housing for our community. And the resolution language that is in particular note, I think, is worth the community hearing. That is, there is a shortage of quality housing of various price ranges in the city despite best efforts of public and private housing developers. The shortage of quality housing can be expected to persist, and that additional financial incentives are necessary in order to encourage the private sector to construct or renovate housing. The shortage of quality housing is a substantial deterrent to the future economic growth and development of the city, and the future economic well-being of the city depends on the governing body providing additional incentives for the construction or renovation of quality housing. In particular, this proposal is to build initially 6 units and ultimately a number more of a variety of types of housing. The first 6 units, as you recall, was moderate income housing that the city received a grant for. The housing market study, one of the things that I thought also should be brought out, and frankly until I saw it in there, it hadn't really occurred to me, indicated that we need additional rental housing, particularly kind of for the workforce group on the north side. And the location that they are working on is near to our major employers, our major industrial employers, as well as near to Lincoln School. And so it's good to have investments of housing all over the community, but for those that are workforce, they're working but need their housing to be based on the income that they do receive, this could be a very critical investment. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Commissioners, are there questions for Mrs. Lee?
Well, I'm personally excited to see some progress made toward our housing issue we've had for many, many years, and I think this is the first step of hopefully more to come. And so I appreciate all your work on this, Wendy, and I make the motion we approve item number 14.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution approving or proposing to recognize the housing study for preparation of the Rural Housing Incentive District. Are there comments among the commissioners? If not, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Abstain.
Mayor Kaler?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Next up moves us on to item 15 on the agenda.
Request for approval of resolution describing the city limits.
This resolution defines and declares the territorial limits and boundaries of the City of Ottawa, including land annexed in 2017. And I believe Mrs. Lee will again be addressing this matter today.
Yes, I will. Any year in which there is any annexation, we are required to pass this at the conclusion of the year. This year, the annexation had to do with a request for that by the Kansas Department of Transportation. So that's the tract that was added to our city limits description, and that's what we have for you today.
And Mrs. Lee, that was a voluntary
Yes, they
annexation,
requested
right?
that
It was a
annexation.
request by the owners of the land.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Lee regarding this request? If not, is there a motion on the table? Would somebody like to make that motion?
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move to approve the resolution as described in item 15 of the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion among commissioners? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Mayor Kaler?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Item 16 on the agenda.
Request for approval of ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance 3834-12 and Chapter 6, Article 8 of Municipal Code.
This ordinance amends the licensing and fee procedures for general, specialty, and trade contractors. I believe Mr. Sherman will be addressing this matter today.
Good morning, Mayor Commissioners.
Good morning.
Before you today is the licensing ordinance that the City of Ottawa has for regulating contractors and those performing construction trades. Dating back to about a year ago, staff began a conversation with the construction public and the general public about the provisions within the code that need to be addressed. It'd been since 2010. Most jurisdictions go through a review about every 3 to 5 years, so it was due. Staff has entertained public meetings, meetings with the Construction Review Board, and some personal one-on-one meetings with contractors. The revisions before you kind of reflect mostly where we're at. We still have a couple more, but that needs a little bit more time and work. Some of the general provisions that we amended this year were allowing anybody employed with the construction company to apply and obtain the building permit. Previously, you had to be the master of the shop, and unfortunately that was too restrictive to some of the even though with the electronic age, it still was restrictive to be that person to have to come down. Usually they were engaged in a lot of activities, and we felt it was more prudent to allow somebody with the company to apply for the permit. Just expedites the process, and we're not slowing things up. Other provisions are addressing licensure as far as the extension date was February 15th if you were late on your license fee. We cut it back to February 1st. It was just easier for a lot of folks and less confusing. You seem to be more apt to know the first of the month or the first of the year than the middle of the month. And that actually came just through having a series of problems the last couple of years of folks coming in after the 15th. And then, of course, the largest change this year is restricting what owners can do on properties that they don't reside in other words, landlords. What we have before you is if you own a 1 or 2 family dwelling and you do not reside there, the landlord can perform maintenance, but cannot perform work that requires a permit. That would fall back to licensing. This reflects pretty much a region-wide. In fact, just yesterday, I polled a couple building official friends in the close region, not clear up to Kansas City or Wichita, but just around like Baldwin, Paola, Lawrence, and this looks a lot like their language, where you can still perform maintenance and not be licensed if you have a 1 or 2 family dwelling. But if you go to multifamily or commercial, you generally need to be a licensed professional contractor to do that work. And then lastly, we cleaned up some language with the ability to students within the vocational program at Ottawa High School to be able to work on those types of trades out in the field and get real-world experience and still meet the intent and need of the code. That's kind of a highlight of the changes. There's nothing really too substantial about the changes other than the landlord provision. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer. Or
Mr. Sherman, I agree with most of the changes we are proposing here. I think they were overdated and needed. I would agree with that. I'm still trying to rationalize in my mind, though, if a person owns multiple rentals and they're allowed to do work in their own house, but for some reason a third or fourth rental property they own, they cannot do some of those same functions they could in their own home. Is that my understanding of what we're looking at?
with this, if it's a one or two family dwelling, they can have 30 and do work in 30 of the dwellings. They just cannot pull up what is a building permit. A building permit is a much higher level of work. Maintenance, as we discussed in the study session, if you want to remove a toilet and replace it with a toilet, the landlord can do that. There's no provisions. If they want to remove a light fixture and place it in kind where it's at, then they can perform that work.
They can do that then.
Right. What they couldn't do is go back to the electric panel, run a new circuit, set a new box. That would be a professional trade and require a technical ability to do that because you're thinking about the routing, the ampacity, the size of the cable, whereas replacing something in kind, it was felt. And as I mentioned, I did a quick poll with some friends I've worked with over the years, and it reflects their ordinance too, that if you replace the same fixture with the same fixture, generally that's okay.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to, yeah.
I was concerned. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I've thought quite a bit about the changes that are on here, and one item that we did not discuss was item L on page 6 of 13, where an individual may do one or two property renovations, not necessarily a landlord, but is somebody that does for rehab, either that they were looking at themselves moving into the property, or at some point they decided to go ahead and sell it. I think I would request that we table this item so that we can have some more study on it and look at it at another study session or two at some point in the future. Just generally, one of our priorities is housing and affordable housing, and I think this is stepping in the wrong direction to limit the people that can do the work on it. I'd like to look at it more. So therefore, I move to table this item for further discussion in study session.
I would second that motion.
Yes.
Commissioners, when you move to table procedurally without setting a specific date at which you'll bring it back, that leaves us, you'll have to make another motion later on. It might be cleaner if you just amended your motion to refer this back to study session.
Okay.
And then let staff bring that to you at an agenda when you have some time.
So moved.
Is the second agreeable to that change?
Yes.
Any discussion among commissioners? If not, we'll proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Mayor Kayler?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Next, that moves us on to item 17 on the agenda.
Request for approval of city manager employment agreement.
City Attorney Blaine Finch will present the current employment agreement for the city manager for consideration and approval. Mr. Finch?
Good morning, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. One of the duties of the city attorney is to do this task, to bring you the city manager's employment agreement every year for your review and consideration and hopefully approval. You all conducted an evaluation of the employee in the city that you directly manage, the only one, the city manager. And I wanted to highlight for both you by way of review and for the community who might be listening or following along with us, that you identified several areas in which your city manager excels in providing service to the city and its citizens. You specifically noted his role in being a leader in the community, being involved and active in various boards and commissions, and bringing his expertise as well as relationship building to those areas. You highlighted his commitment to openness and transparency. I think he's been a leader in the community in this area, and you all noted that, everything from putting meetings on Facebook Live to making sure that we follow all necessary procedures to give the public maximum opportunity for input. And I think that has gone hat in hand with what your approach to being open and transparent to the public as well. You noted his heart for service, that he never forgets that it is the people of the community that we serve, and that every decision we make and every implementation of policy that you all make should be geared to providing the best possible service to the citizens of our community. And you noted that he's become a recognized leader across the state of Kansas, specifically when you all go to League of Municipalities conferences. It is other city managers and other communities of all sizes that are coming to Richard to seek out his counsel and wisdom on how to deal with difficult or pressing matters. And that is something that is a huge benefit to our citizens here, that we have his expertise and his counsel right here in Ottawa. After your review of his performance over the last year, you asked me to update his contract and bring it to you for consideration publicly today. Specifically, on compensation, you asked that he receive the same cost of living adjustment and merit raise that was available to all city employees. That would move his base compensation from $115 to $117, a 1.7% increase in base compensation. You asked that we look at the pre-retirement catch-up that you began last year, and that we accelerate that so it will be complete by the end of this year on his deferred compensation with the International City Management Association. You asked me to consider a slight bump to the car allowance. We thought, remember, we did that last year, but it turned out that the contracts that we had not been updated from many years before. So this year you've opted to increase that slightly. And then you asked to extend the contract for one additional year. So the contract will run through the end of 2020 at this point. Richard has been with you 10 years at this point, and so by the end of that run, it would have been 13 with this one-year extension. I would point out to the Commission that based on market studies, you continue to get an excellent value with your city manager. We are below market. If we had to go out tomorrow and try to replace the expertise and experience that we have in a city manager, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to do at the rates of compensation that are contained in this contract. So Richard gives great value to the citizens of the community and to you all as the city manager. And I want to publicly state what you all have said, that you appreciate him greatly and recognize the benefit that he brings to Ottawa. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions for Mr. Finch?
Madam Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move to approve the contract as described by our city consulate.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second and a third.
Probably a fourth if we waited long enough.
Exactly. I'll wait for the fourth. Is there any discussion of the commissioners? If not, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Kaler?
When I vote yes, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Neinstead. We appreciate it. And we appreciate it so much that we're going to let you talk next for at least 2 minutes, if not 3. We will turn off your microphone, though, if you get too wordy. Just saying.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you. And this is from my wife and I, both my wife, and I know my family feels this way also. The opportunity that was afforded to us 10 years ago to come to Ottawa, I knew it was a great opportunity. Ottawa, when my dad, and some of you knew my father, my dad told me after I'd taken this job and come here that Ottawa is a place that he always wanted to work in, that he liked Ottawa. And as a boy during the Depression, they used to, I actually have roots in here. I know you find that hard to believe, but But they used to go, the relatives in Wellsville and Baldwin, and they would go back and forth between Kansas City, and they would go back and forth between Emporia. And my dad used to tell stories about on the north side of the river, there was a gas station there, and about how he and his brother would get up and look at the Meridazine and think that was a pretty big river. And it was to a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. But my point is, I'm a success. We are successes because of you and because of all the employees that work for this city. They get up every day, and they do the best they can from the time they come to work till the time they go home, and a lot of them continue to do the best they can to promote this city, to make sure that you have good streets, to make sure that we have good parks, to make sure that we have the best community we can, to not only raise our children, to come back home to after we've been away to, but to bring new people in. And it is because of them that I'm able to be here and that you're able to be here, because without that commitment out of those employees and the commitment out of our 13,000 citizens who every day get up and promote this city, and they want a good city, and they are also out there working and promoting, we would not be successes. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
So one more thing.
Oh, okay.
So we're about ready to go into uncharted territory, and that is when you take your oath of office. So June 8th is when...
January?
Pardon? January. Well, June 8th is actually my son's birthday. So there you go.
Happy birthday, Marshall.
So January 8th is when we do, is when we're going to have your swearing in. Normally it would be in April and all that. So we've reserved this room. That's a study session day. We will have a light study session for you. And we will, what we generally do is swear in new commissioners. We recognize the outgoing commissioners, and we hold a reception for both, and we will do that day also. So on January 2nd, I would suspect that you will need to have a spot on there that at the study session that you said we would have on January 2nd at 4 p.m., I would suspect that you will have a spot on there where you can also talk about reorganization of the commission. And my guess is that we will take care of that formally on January 8th, right? So the other great thing that's happening on January 8th is my wife's and I 41st wedding anniversary, and we get to spend it with you.
Yes.
Rita's excited.
Yes. Thank you, Rita Neinstead.
One more thing. And after the commissioners get done and the mayor gets done, if you would mind, just please kind of letting me wind up the meeting for you, please.
We shall see. That moves us on to reports by city commissioners. City Commissioner Graves.
I have no report.
City Commissioner Skidmore.
I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
City Commissioner Jorgensen.
Wish Merry Christmas as well, and I just want to thank our city manager, Neinstead, for 10 years, a decade of service to our community. It was us part of the original crowd that hired him, and it's probably one of the smartest things that we did. So the impact that you have had on our community that's a little over 150 years old in the past 10 years has been great, and we appreciate the job that you're doing. So thank you very much.
City Commissioner Crowley.
I have none.
Okay. That moves to report by the mayor. Yesterday, I do want to tell a quick story. I know this is hard for everyone to believe, but yesterday at the grocery store, I had somebody say that they watch every single one of our meetings, and they always appreciate that not only do we address the issues that are happening in our community for whatever they're worth, but we always seem to bring just a little bit of happiness too and talk about some good things that are happening in our community. So I'm glad for that. Occasionally, when you turn on the news, it's not always happy stuff. So if we can talk about the good things that are happening in our community, I'd like to do that. And I want to highlight a couple people who really do share some joy and spread joy here in our community. First is our city manager, who certainly does his absolute best to make our community just as wonderful as it can be. I appreciate your leadership. I know everybody here at the table appreciates your leadership, but we appreciate the fact that you are present in our community and that we see you as really a forward thinker into moving our community into the next, into the future. So thank you. The second person is a person that we probably all know, and most of our commissioners here, actually I think all of our commissioners signed a Christmas card for him today, and individuals who are watching this know this person, but Danny Kuhlman is a individual and a citizen that has lived in our community for years, and he spent several years living right over by the school, and he would get up and wave at every single kiddo that was going to school, at middle school, high school. If they're getting on the bus, he would wave at them and tell them good morning. And he has recently moved. He didn't move out of the community, which was good, but he's moved away from the school, and people are missing that. So if you see Danny, please tell him that you appreciate the joy that he shares with our community. I think he is somebody who just brings a ray of sunlight into our community whenever you see him, and so I know I certainly appreciate it. My children appreciate it, and my husband and I talk about it frequently about what the joy he shares with our community. So Merry Christmas to him and to all of our citizens. We have on to announcements. December 25th, we will be closed because it is Christmas, and we will also be closed on the New Year. We will have a special study session on the 2nd of January at 4 p.m., and we will have our regular meeting on the 3rd of January. If there's nothing else to be brought forth for us today, we will adjourn until our study session, our special study session at 4 p.m. Oh, okay, we're not going to adjourn yet. City Manager Neinstead, I reluctantly give you the microphone only because I know what you're going to ask us to do.
So, thank you very much. Before we move on, I understand there's a costume change going to take place, so please do that. So, the first thing I'd like to do is a couple weeks ago, the department heads and I went around to each department and took them Christmas cookies as a way of saying thank you. And we would be remiss if we did not do that with you. So Mrs. Lee is going to help me. And if the department head
just one more cherry mash. Oh, I can do that.
Commissioner Jorgensen, is that a wardrobe malfunction or is this?
I can't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look,
Thank
you
you.
have to come behind.
I'm usually giving the cookies, not receiving them.
Yeah, everybody come behind.
If you do not mind, we will join you behind the podium.
Yes, please. We invite you to join us.
And the rest of you can join us too.
My goodness. We're going to scoot together.
I think we do have to scoot together, right?
Yeah.
Come on down.
So here's what's
Our
important
songbird.
to know. To our citizens, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you for everything you do to help everyone here help make this city a better place for you to live, to work, and to play. And as a way of saying thank you, Scott Bird, our Director of Finance, will lead us in a stanza of a popular Christmas song.
We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Great, good job. All right, do we get a pick? Everybody got a
Thank
pen?
you.
Awesome.